This is Michael Reid Trice with the Religica Theolab, and in cooperation with the Center for Religious Wisdom and World Affairs at STM Seattle University. Today, I'm in conversation with Jennifer Cate, who is the Executive Director of Hands Along the Nile. We're discussing the Zabaleen, the important work of Hands Along the Nile, and the power of language as a cultural influencer that is essential to our shared future in the world. Take a listen.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Cate. I'm the Executive Director of Hands Along the Nile. I've actually been at Hands for 18 years now, which is amazing to think that I've been in any place that I'm even old enough to have been somewhere for 18 years. I grew up overseas and I spent my young adult life working in the Middle East and Central Asia. And at some point, I just decided I wanted to be from somewhere. And I was American. My parents were American. So I chose a place, and I chose Washington, D.C. I thought it was a place where I could still be very involved in an international community and could continue to give back to the Middle East, a place that had been so important to me and people who had just fed me in so many ways, both literally and metaphorically, for so many years. So I settled in Washington, D.C., and rather than hopping around from job to job like one does during one's 20s, I actually found this wonderful organization called Hands Along the Nile and have been here for 18 years. I just feel very fortunate to have been able to grow with the organization over that time.
I want to talk to you about Hands Along the Nile, but for the moment, the Zabaleen. Tens of thousands of people live in Zabaleen on the outskirts of Cairo, Egypt, and make their living out of recycling the entire capital city's refuse. The listener may not know about this. Now, you and I visited with a group that you hosted in 2018. It was transformational for me. I can remember the sounds of children, of the people, and of a sense of hope that was like glue holding up the corners of the buildings themselves. You gave us an introduction to the Zabaleen that was unforgettable. What is the story of these people?
Sure. So let's start with the actual term Zabbaleen, which means the people of the garbage. So Zabala is garbage and Zabaleen are people of the garbage. And now to you and to me, this word might seem a little bit offensive, but it really isn't. The people who live and work in this community are very proud to be called the Zabbaleen. So there are about 6 communities of these garbage people who are really garbage collectors and recyclers. 6 communities of them in Cairo. And there are about 250,000 or so people spread among these communities. Our work is mostly in a community in Muqattam, which is a mountain in the middle of Cairo, and about 100,000 of them live there and work there. So just to kind of paint the picture for you, these are people who collect and recycle the garbage of Cairo. They recycle about 80% of the waste that they collect, 80%.
How many people? 18 million plus people?
20 million about who live in Cairo and Giza. Yeah. And so if you compare that to a Western city, our recycling rate is about 25%. So these people by hand are recycling 80% of the trash they collect. And so, I mean, just to kind of paint the picture of what that looks like, in the morning, the fathers and the children go out with their donkey carts and sometimes now with their little pickup trucks. They spread out through the city and they have these routes that they have been given. They'll go out to the district where they're collecting garbage and then they go door to door. They actually climb the stairs of your apartment building and pick up your garbage from next to your door every day, bring it back down, throw it in the back of their donkey cart and ride on to the next building. The father's usually driving the donkey. The kids are often riding with the trash in the back. About midday, when they're done with their route, they're done collecting all their garbage, they head back up the mountain, back uphill. They bring their donkey cart to what is essentially the front door of their house, and they just dump it. They empty it into the main room. And I will say nowadays, they often live upstairs. They've been able to save up a little more money, so they have a second floor so they can live up above the trash, which has been a great development. So you've got your ground floor of your home now full of trash, and then the women and the girls get to work. And they squat down in the trash, and they spend all day sorting the trash. They sort it into, I think it's about 16 different types of trash. There's cardboard, and there's this type of paper, and there's glass, and there's plastic. There's several types of plastic, all of the different things that we throw into our trash. So the organic waste, the food, ends up going to their pigs. About 90% or so of this community are Christians, and so they're able to raise pigs, which they then sell to other Christians and to the tourist business. So the pigs eat all of the the leftover food scraps. Everything else gets divided up. And then these people really make a living off of selling the trash to particular families who recycle a particular type of trash. So if your family recycles 10 tin cans, you're going to have a special little machine there, and you'll buy everybody else's tin cans and you'll crush them down, and then you'll sell them on to someone else. Somebody does the plastic, so they'll shred plastic, melt it into these little pellets, sell that to someone else who takes the pellets and melts it into plastic hangers, which are then sold to dry cleaners. I mean, it's amazing. It's really, really amazing. But of course, living in the midst of garbage, A, is not healthy, but B, the children traditionally were pulled out of school to work in these family businesses and recycling and collecting trash. So they were forgoing an education. They were dropping out of school after elementary school or even younger. So it was really a community where the cycle of poverty was just continued over the generations. Can I tell you about a project that we've got there in the community?
Please do.
So one of the programs that we support there is a women's job skills training center, and women from the community, women and girls, come in and they can learn a marketable skill. And we build off of this whole ethos of recycling and sort of respecting the environment. So the women and the girls learn to use scraps of leftover paper, leftover fabric, things that companies donate to us. So it's not pulled out of the trash. It's donated by companies. Recently, they're also using little bottle caps and soda can tap, things like that. And they create crafts. So they learn how to do either weaving or quilting or paper recycling or some kind of sewing with these soda can tabs, or making jewelry out of little single-serve coffee pods, like from our Keurig kind of coffee containers. So these women make amazing, beautiful items, and it's all recycled from leftover scraps from factories and businesses that they've donated to us. And through this, the women are making a living. They're starting to bring income into the family from something besides the trash collecting and recycling that their families do. And so not only is it helping to raise their standard of living, but it's also really increasing their own sense of value and self-worth. While they're there, their kids can be in a school, in a preschool that is there on the premises. They can get free health care, and they learn to read and write. And then some of them have even gone on, and we've encouraged them to finish their education. Many now are going to college. So it really has been part of the transformation of that community. And we're seeing now more and more kids are staying in school, more and more kids are going to college. And so there's a lot less child labor except within, helping the family. So it's been I think a really transformational project that we've been really proud to be involved with.
You've mentioned so many things here. One of those in terms of constructing art or rugs or earrings. Some things out of refuse, I understand. Some things out of donations from other companies or corporations. But I remember visiting one of these places, and it doesn't do justice to even really talk about it. I mean, the work itself has an aesthetic appeal or beauty, whether it's a stuffed animal or an entire rug or a quilt, that reflects something about the resiliency of this community that you're talking about. In particularly the resiliency of women and the role of women as leaders in the Zabaleen. Could you talk a little more about that?
Sure. So women are increasingly taking on leadership roles in that community. There are about 50 preschools now in the community that have been started up that are all run by women. Women work as sort of healthcare, sort of home healthcare visitors, where they go around and try to get people to take their shots and, do different health checkups. Women in the community are managing a lot of the NGOs. They're helping as literacy instructors. They lead the church choir and are working as community mobilizers. And then, of course, they're the recyclers along with their spouses or alone. They're working in a particular recycling business as well. So I think we're very hopeful about sort of the role of women. And we think that this center that we support there has really helped to empower women because now they have a source of income. They know how to work. Many of them have become literate. Others have gone on to college from there. So we do increasingly see women taking on more leadership. The one thing that really hasn't changed is that the women are still sorting the waste manually. And we've tried, some of our colleagues there have tried to get the city to encourage separation of organic and non-organic waste, in people's homes, but that hasn't worked out. So the women are still spending a portion of their days sitting down in the garbage, sorting out food scraps from aluminum, from plastic. So that is still a challenge that they face, but we're optimistic. They've made so many strides, just in the time that we've been engaged with them. So we're encouraged that things will continue to improve in the future.
You direct the organization. The name, it seems to me, is inclusive of life throughout Egypt, from Upper Egypt to the Lower Peninsula, with the image of water in the Nile and maybe the tactile kind of hands or the nature of hands that are at work for your organization there, but also in the United States. What do you want others to see and know about the work of hands today?
So I think going back to our name, a lot of people call us Hands Across the Nile, which has the image of sort of Americans kind of partnering with Egyptians, supporting Egyptians. That is what we do. But our actual name is Hands Along the Nile. So if you picture hands going all the way up from the north, from Alexandria, all the way to the south, to the villages in the southern part of Egypt, we really are hands along the Nile because we are supporting organizations and local leaders on the ground in communities all up and down, Egyptians who are the ones who are making the difference in their communities. We are there to help build capacity. We're there to offer financial support. We're there to oversee programs that we're sponsoring. But really, it's about the local leadership of people and organizations all along the Nile. And so I think that is sort of the relevance of our name. I always picture people and hands sort of working together in these little villages all along the Nile. And I just want to point out too why we've decided to focus on Egypt.
Okay.
People often say, why are you investing in just one country and trying to help raise people out of poverty and provide hope and empowerment in just one country? So Egypt has 100 million people in it. That's a quarter of the Arab world. It's just a vast amount of people. So if you were to break that down a little bit, so Egypt is about 90% Muslim, about 10% Christian. So there are more Muslims in Egypt, more Sunni Muslims in Egypt than there are in Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, Oman, Yemen, Libya, and Qatar combined. It's that big. And even just the Christian population, there are more Christians in Egypt than there are Jews in Israel. I mean, it's just a huge population. And Egypt struggles with some big challenges. They can only live on about 4% of the land that's arable. So they're trying to make a living and support 100 million people off of this little strip of land along the Nile. So depending on the statistics you read, our local partners say probably about 50% of people live in poverty. There's this huge youth bulge. About 61% of the population is under the age of 30. And then when you look at youth, like youth that could be sort of employed or in school, say think about age 15 and 30, 2/3 of them are jobless. They're not in school and they're not able to find employment. So that's just a huge problem, for this sizable population. There are a lot of studies out there that say this is just a huge problem across the Middle East. And I also want to point out women. As you probably noticed when you visited projects with us, Michael, we work a lot with women, whether it's in job skills training, vocational training, microloans, because in Egypt, only 23% of women are ever able to find a job during their lifetime. And again, that is all across the Middle East and North Africa. There was a study that came out last year that said if the current situation regarding sort of the gender economic gap in the MENA region continues, that it would take 150 years for women to achieve equal participation in those societies. So we can't deal with the whole region. So we start with Egypt. Egypt really is a leader in the region, both politically and even just in terms of entertainment and news and broadcasts that come out of Egypt. So we think trying to help bring socioeconomic growth there can impact the whole region. And the projects that we do there that are implemented successfully can be replicated in other countries.
In terms of understanding culture, I imagine, like me, when you were raised, you weren't learning Arabic, but you're fluent in Arabic now. Why is it that language is so important? And can you also say a word, as I understand, Hands Along the Nile has a program for learning Arabic that is free to the public. I want to make sure we make time for you to talk about that.
I think, as a native English speaker, I can go almost anywhere in the world and people will understand me and will try to speak to me in my language. And I think there is a certain humility that comes in trying to learn another language and, learning to express myself, let's say in Arabic. I really am limited in the types of things I can say because it's not my native language. And it gives me more of a respect for all of these people around the world, including immigrants here in our own country, who are struggling to communicate in what is not their first language. We can get so impatient sometimes with people and that they just aren't able to express themselves in just very eloquently or in the way that they would in their first language. So I think for me, learning other languages, including Arabic, is really important in that sense because I see how limited I am in the way that I'm able to express myself. And it sort of gives me humility and appreciation for what other people are struggling with as they communicate with me in English. And so, yes, so speaking of Arabic, we do have an online Arabic program. I will correct you and say it's not actually free, but it's a program that is where we set up online one-on-one Arabic classes between an individual here in the West and one of our Egyptian teachers. And the payment for these classes, which is pretty modest as far as language classes go, is supporting both the teacher and giving them a livelihood. And it's also helping to support our work in communities all over Egypt. So yeah, we would love to have some of your listeners come and join us. They can go to our website, which is handsalongthenile.org, and click on, they'll see a link there for Arabic classes. And we would love to set them up for a series of classes with a wonderful teacher. We'll sort of find a teacher that fits what you're looking for, fits your schedule. I have to say, I'm one of the students. I take classes every week with an Arabic teacher and thoroughly enjoy it.
And if the listener would also like to learn more about the work you're doing with communities, with women leadership and microloans and more, where should they go?
So check out our website, handsalongthenile.org. We're also very active on Facebook if you look for Hands Along the Nile, and we're starting an Instagram account as well.
It's 5 years from now. Hands Along the Nile continues doing its good work in the world. What are 3 things that you would like to see in that future?
So first of all, I'd like to see a much higher percentage of women in meaningful employment. And then along with that, feeling more of a sense of their own voice and power in their families and their communities. Secondly, I would like to see a much higher level of youth in meaningful employment and really able to choose what jobs they go into, not based on what their parents did or what their level of income is, but really based on where their passions are. Third thing, I would like to see the people of the Middle East and the West appreciating each other, having a little bit more nuanced understanding of the other culture, and not resorting to stereotypes about the other.
You have been listening to the Center for Religious Wisdom and World Affairs in cooperation with the Religica Theo Lab.